立法會主席。
The President. Good morning. Motion for the adjournment of the Council under Rule 16(4) of the Rules of Procedure. In accordance with Rule 16(6) and 7 of the Rules of Procedure, the total speaking time for this debate is 1.5 hours, of which not more than 75 minutes are for speeches by members. In accordance with Rule 18(b) of the House Rules, each member, including the motion mover, may only speak once and speak for up to 5 minutes. After members have spoken, the public officer will reply. I wish to remind members that if the total speaking time of members reaches 75 minutes, irrespective of whether a member is speaking, I'm obliged to direct the member to stop speaking immediately. It is now 9 sharp. The debate now begins. Members who wish to speak on the motion will please press the Request to Speak button. I call upon Mr. Gary Chan to speak and move the motion. President, I move that this Council do now adjourn for the purpose of debating following issue: the impact on the interests of Hong Kong and the country arising from the remarks made by Mr. Benny TAI Yiu-ting, one of the initiators of the Occupy Central movement at a forum held in Taiwan in March 2018, that Hong Kong could consider becoming an independent state. In March this year, Benny TAI attended an event held by Taiwan Youth Anti-Communist Corps. He said that Hong Kong could consider becoming an independent state. It has caused public outcry, and the Hong Kong SAR government has made a press release expressing condemnation and shock. Some people say that Benny Tai has freedom of speech. They have distorted the idea, and it only shows that they have no grounds to stand on. There is no room for anyone to spread the idea that Hong Kong can become independent. Some people wonder why people are up in arms in relation to this incident. It's because Benny Tai is not an ordinary person. He is an associate professor of a faculty of law. He is one of the initiators of the Occupy Central movement. He also took part in Project Storm and Thunder Go. So he is a leader of sorts. And what he said is not just some mere remarks. I do think that the LegCo should have a clear stance. If we do not express our stance, members of the public may think that LegCo condones someone to spread the idea of Hong Kong independence, that we don't have the determination to uphold one country, two systems. So I ask members to speak in support of their stance to oppose to Hong Kong independence. And I also appeal to members not to defend Benny Tai, because the more they defend Benny Tai, the more they show that they are related to separatists of Hong Kong. Well, Hong Kong independence is not on the opposing side of freedom of speech. If you say that, it only shows that you have something to hide. I remember the last time when we discussed this topic, the Pan-Democrats used a number of reasons to defend Benny Tai. They asked, what has Benny Tai said that has broken the law? The LegCo is not a court. We have no right to judge whether he has broken the law. At the same time, Pan-Democrats are not the judge. It's not the case that when you say he's not guilty, he is not. The remarks made by Benny Tai obviously has affected the mutual trust between Hong Kong and the mainland and one country, two systems. That is beyond doubt. So we have reason to condemn or censure Benny Tai. Pan-Democrats also said that what we do will affect freedom of, academic freedom. In this case, academic freedom is only a shield used by Benny Tai. Whether the event, is it an academic event? I think people are discerning. I do believe that only those who are blind would believe that it is an academic event or forum. If you recall what the host introduced Benny Tai, you would know that it is not an academic forum. The host said that Benny Tai is number one of the Occupy Central trio. How can it be an academic forum? The basic law protects us so that we have freedom of speech, but it doesn't protect us to say that we have the freedom to say Hong Kong should be independent. So please don't defend Benny Tai. We should oppose Hong Kong independence. Support my motion. You should distance yourself from Benny Tai and Hong Kong independence. Mr. Chiu Ka-chun. Mr. Gary Chan moves a German motion to condemn Benny Tai. I think, should Benny Tai be here today in this chamber, what would he said in reply to this motion? Should Benny Tai, the professor, is here, I imagine that this is what he would say. There is an adjournment motion on the remarks I made outside Hong Kong. This is ridiculous. I am someone who don't have public office. I'm going to face a trial. There's a chance that I may go to prison. Now you use precious time of let's go to debate on some remarks I made in Taiwan. And it's only something about Hong Kong and China. It puzzles me. I can only think of two reasons. One is rather pompous. Some people may be afraid that I am too influential, and what I said in Taiwan would make Hong Kong youngsters to think out of the box and challenge the idea of unity. And I don't think that I am not the one who would start such an idea. I was only talking about Hong Kong independence without any premises. It would be the chief executive who denied on three occasions that mother tongue is Cantonese as the secretary for education, who said that who dispute about Hong Kong lies at the south of China. I do think I'm only a scapegoat for an ulterior agenda. I think that what they're doing to me is just something that is likened to what happened in Cultural Revolution, just to pave the way for Article 23. They may also use it to divide the Pan-Democrats or everything above. I feel helpless. This is a motion about me, but I am not given an opportunity to make a representation. This is a violation of procedural justice. I can only rely on Mr. Chiu Ka-chun to read out my statement, but it's not made by me, and it doesn't protect my right to procedural justice. I am also concerned that there is shrinking freedom of speech in Hong Kong. A scholar said to me that there is a theory called world state. It says that in the end, sovereign states will evolve into one single state. Should that happen, then the totalitarian rule of China will disappear. Can we discuss about these international world state? Everything will become nothing, and there will be a new world. The authoritarian rule of China will disappear. Does it mean that this will have to be taken out from the Bible? Only a Bible that is politically correct can remain. Some loyalists may share my view. they may feel helpless. But now, with our chief executive acting like a provincial official, there is nothing we can do. I do understand your plight. I would read your speech the other way around. I thank pan-democrats and those in the civil society, as well as those who truly believe in Hong Kong's democracy and freedom. They have undauntingly defended our freedoms. China has been drawing red lines one after another, but to a free man, there is no room for any red line. Should Benny Tai is here today to defend himself, I'm sure that he would say what I've said, because that's what he has written personally. He gave it to me to read it out for him. Thank you. Dr. Kokaki, before I start, I want to cite what Mao Zedong said on the 3rd of September 1920. I advocate a Hunan Republic. Well, there is a theory that a country that can survive will be big countries, and they suppress smaller countries. They try to get colonies. China has awoken. This is a world for proletariats or commoners. Hunan should become independent. In 1919, when Mao Zedong participated in the Hunan independence movement, he said that in 1920. He thought that the way to save the country is to allow citizens to survive by their own means and ways. Should Mao Zedong be still alive, then Carrie Lam, Xi Jinping will have to severely criticize him. We live in a society where there is equality and freedom. Mao Zedong made those remarks in 1920. He talked about his utopia with freedom. I don't think anyone would think about Hong Kong independence. We're concerned that people don't learn from Mao Zedong about this, but they learn from him about Cultural Revolution bad antics. Benny Tai participated in a Taiwan event. He did not say anything to advocate Hong Kong independence. There was a statement made by the Hong Kong SAR government as well as the Hong Kong Macau office. They have been criticizing him, lashing out at him. Hong Kong is, the PRC is a signing state of the ICCPR. Still, it is not rectified. I do think you should put on a better show at least. PRC has been a contract state of the ICCPR. Why is there the idea of Hong Kong independence? It is because in the face of a rotten ruling power, a sycophant chief executive, a sycophant Hong Kong SAR government, you can't even say that Hong Kong lies at the south of China. You can't even say that Cantonese is Hong Kong people's mother tongue. How can you stop people from having certain ideas? What they're trying to achieve is to have a chilling effect. These puppets, these monkeys, want to have authoritarian rule in Hong Kong so that no one is allowed their own thoughts, so that each youngster will dance to the tune of the party, not the country, but the party. But party is not the country. Benny Tai is only a scholar. He has no guns, he has no cannons, is not like Mao Zedong. Mao Zedong advocated a military struggle.
Benny Tai only put forth a suggestion, a proposal. Well, Dr. Sun Yat-sen, Mao Zedong, and other communists have talked about the idea of a federal system for China. They all said that. So that's something that can be considered. What's wrong with saying that we could consider it? Well, if you dare, you can go to the mausoleum for Mao and took out his corpse for punishment. Please be a dignified Chinese person. Respect every intellectual. Respect the freedom of academic exploration. Mr. Leung Yu-chung, in March this year, Benny Tai, Associate Professor of the Faculty of Law at Hong Kong U, attended an academic forum in Taiwan. He said Hong Kong could consider becoming an independent state. And he was strongly criticized by the Hong Kong Macau office and the CE. Well, they to me belong to the same group. And I think what is right and what is wrong is very clear. The so-called Hong Kong independence statement is just taken out of context from Professor Tai's speech. And they have tried to distort it deliberately. Professor Tai has repeatedly clarified that he's not a supporter of Hong Kong independence. Although the fact is before us, but there are people who like to give people the labels and try to stir up the populist sentiment. And this is an attempt to take away, to destroy the promise of 50 years of autonomous rule in Hong Kong. And the Secretary for Education, on the one hand, said he would respect institutional freedom. And he also could not help but add that we should prevent people in support of Hong Kong independence infiltrating the campus in Hong Kong. This is actually a violation of the autonomy of our educational institutions. So I would like to ask this question. Are there any laws to say that in our schools and education institutions there should be no discussion on the future of Hong Kong and the constitutional system that we might consider adopting in the future, and that people should not express such views? If you think there are such laws on those issues, say so. Don't ask your rookies to come out and level the unwarranted attacks. So I would just like to ask: so on what basis can you attack Benny Tai? Well, he's a scholar who cares about Hong Kong's future and also democracy. What's wrong with sharing with other people his views? Don't try to whitewash the behavior of the CPG, and don't try to copy the brutal tactics to suppress intellectuals and to suppress freedom of expression and freedom of speech. This is most alarming. Freedom of speech and freedom of free academic pursuit are guaranteed rights. I hope everyone in Hong Kong should be wise and open up your eyes and see through the ploy, and you can tell then who is trying to stir up troubles and affect our freedom. Dr. Lo Wai Kuo, According to Rule 16(4) of the Rules of Procedure, a member may move a motion of adjournment to discuss an issue of public interest. The issue raised by Mr. CHAN Hak-kan's motion is actually a matter of public interest. If not properly handled, this would affect our interests, it would affect the operation of one country, two system, and would have adverse implications for the country and for Hong Kong. But in March, Professor Benny Tai, in attending a forum in Taiwan, said Hong Kong could consider becoming an independent state or set up a federal government. This is not simple. This is very out of the ordinary. Professor Benny Tai is not a scholar who cares about academic pursuit. He was one of the initiators of the Occupy movement, and in 2016, he organized the project Project Fundago. So he was a participant in the political events, and Professor Tai has expressed views and make speeches with political calculations. And Professor Tai was not attending an ordinary academic forum in Taiwan. It was one organized by pro-Taiwan independence elements. And this has caused severe damage to Hong Kong. And now he has attended a pro-independence forum in Taiwan, and he has affected our peace and our law and order situation. It would also violate the principle of one country, two system. This is outraging. And Professor Tai previously published articles and speeches on Hong Kong's independence. Actually, if we look at the basic law, at the very first article, it says Hong Kong SAR is an inalienable part of the PRC. So he has ulterior motives in making these speeches. His behavior in Taiwan has been roundly criticized by the Hong Kong and Macau office of the State Council, the SAR government, and all sectors of the community. And 41 members of this council issued a joint statement on the 1st of April condemning such speeches and pointing out that his speech is in violation of the basic law and the Constitution, and no one should do anything that would undermine the security of the country. Professor Tai claims that that was just an academic discussion, and he also claimed that the criticism against him was about paving the way to a draconian law enacted under Article 23. Actually, what he has done exceeded the scope of freedom of academic pursuit. Enacting legislation under Article 23 and to safeguard national security is the obligation of the SAR government. There's no need to do anything to provide the justification of doing this. We should do whatever it takes to stop these people trying to go about their cessation activities. This is only right that the SAR government should do a better job in publicity and public education about the basic law, and also to enable our people to understand correctly how the basic law is to be implemented. So I speak. Mr. Christopher Chiang. President, first of all, I would like to thank Mr. CHAN Hak-kan for moving this adjournment debate so that we have a chance to have a debate on the speech made by Professor Benny Tai in Taiwan, which involved advocating Hong Kong's independence. Once again, he has exposed his true color as a pro-independence element. And to these people, we have to condemn who want to promote independence of Hong Kong, we should condemn them. We should ask them to bear the responsibility and suffer the consequences. Professor Tai's speech affects public interest and is an attempt to cause the division of the country. And it's a serious provocation in respect of the basic law. It will affect our long-term peace and stability. And Professor Tai is stirring political trouble. He's a political activist in the name of academic pursuit. He was also the organizer of the Occupy movement in 2014, and he advocated breaking the law to achieve justice. He has misled many young people, and now he went to Taiwan and advocated independence. This is a violation of the constitution of our country and the basic law. With sweet talks, he's spreading evil messages. We should take away his veil of hypocrisy, so that he will be prevented from publishing such fallacies in the name of freedom of speech. And after causing much public outrage, Professor Tai said this was an attempt to suppress his freedom of speech, and he tried to excuse himself. Well, it's a disgraceful act on his part that he does not have the courage to admit it after what he has done. And there are people who blindly support him. We hope that this German debate will enable us to see clearly the truth and who is, in the name of freedom of speech, doing something to divide the country and harm the interests of Hong Kong. President, I hope the outrage of the public will teach them a lesson. And I hope that there will be follow-up action on his behavior to advocate message of independence. And we have to tell the university that an associate professor working in that university advocated breaking the law in order to achieve justice and also spread messages of independence and advocating the same. The university should be asked to give an account on what it would do to address the problem. And also, there's a need to review what the government has done and whether there are any inadequacies, and also whether Article 23 legislation should be enacted expeditiously as a matter of urgency. If the government continues to avoid this obligation of enacting legislation under 23 and claim that we have to wait for a suitable social atmosphere, this would be an encouragement to these pro-independence elements, so I speak. Mr. CHAN Hak-kan has moved an adjournment debate in order that we can discuss the speech of Professor Tan. I think this is ridiculous. We are a legislature. Our powers are given to us to monitor the executive, the government. We monitor how the government spends public funds, and also we oversee the legislative process. If we use our powers to monitor ordinary people like Professor Tai, this is against the cardinal principle of this legislature, because that would mean that we are colluding with the executive. So I don't think there's any dispute here. I don't think we need to look into the speech of the content of the speech of Professor Tai, whether it's advocating independence of Hong Kong or not, because as a matter of principle, we shouldn't have this debate to start with. And even if people put up defenses for Professor Tai's speech, I would say that this is not the right forum.
As I said, to oppose to Mr. Gary Chan and another member's motion in the House Committee, today's motion debate will only become political struggle. The LegCo is not the court, and I would like to say that the LegCo is not a political court. The person involved has no chance to be here to speak to us. He has no chance to make use of airwave or the mass media to reply to the points we have made. We may only have an hour and a half. This is very close to political struggle in a cultural revolution. You have used the LegCo, a council meeting, a civilized way left to us by the British, for use of a political struggle. So every time there is a motion that talks about a mere member of the public, I would oppose to it. It is our duty to monitor the government. We should monitor the government to see if they have done anything or said anything that violates human rights or freedom of speech. We do not stand on the same side as the administration to criticize a member of the public for what they have said. The executive may use their resources or their power to criticize, but we are the legislature. We should not go beyond our terms of office. We should monitor the government to see if they have infringed upon anyone's freedom of speech and human rights. And I would like to say that the representative of the Constitutional and Mainland Affairs Bureau is not appropriate. Let's look at yesterday. It was a motion to vindicate June 4th. I did not participate. I did not vote on it. How come yesterday there was no presence from the administration to discuss about something that is part of history, that is a fact? Now, you think that the administration can make a presence to make use of their public power to criticize the remarks made by a member of the public. Is it an appropriate exercise of power? I do think that today we're here. We should be here to criticize the administration, to make use of the LegCo to elevate what a member of the public has said to an unproportional level. So I oppose to Mr. Gary Chan's motion. Mr. Hon Chow. President Benny Tai, when attending a forum in Taiwan, made some remarks to advocate Hong Kong independence and separatism. Well, this is a forum with separatists of Xinjiang and Hong Kong and Tibet. He said that this is an academic forum, so they should have academic freedom. No one will believe you. We have one country, two systems. We have the basic law. Such conduct and such remarks should be restricted. The opposition tried to defend Benny Tai by using freedom of speech as well as academic freedom. They have abused such freedom. Spreading Hong Kong independence and separatism is like playing with fire. We see a lot of so-called independent movement that ends in bloodshed. We see in North Ireland, they have had series of bloodshed. Benny Tai and the opposition that defends him, maybe they would like to see Hong Kong ended in a bloodbath. It is the worst to make use of racial sentiment to divide a race. Benny Tai and the opposition want to push Hong Kong towards more and more conflicts like the Mongkok riot. So if you don't like it, you know what will happen. If we don't say anything here, well, then we haven't done our part to try to curb it. Legislating for Article 23 is our constitutional duty. If anyone wants to make use of a situation where there is no such legislation to advocate Hong Kong independence and secession, is pushing Hong Kong over the cliff. What is Benny Tai? He is an initiator of Occupy Central. He continues to lead youngsters astray in university. In the past, he participated in Thunder Go to appeal to people to give up their votes. He's not an ordinary member of citizen. If you consider his capacity and what he has done, we can't just we can't not do anything. We do need to speak out. We do need to support Mr. Chan's motion. We have to make our stance clear. Hong Kong strictly abides by a one country, two system. We don't allow people to advocate Hong Kong independence or secession. Mr. Jonathan Ho. Well, this wasn't a very popular topic in Hong Kong. Someone said it's because the former chief executive who has started it. Because once he has said that there were a lot of discussion on the internet. It was first a student publication of the Hong Kong U, and then later there were a lot of discussions in groups, and now in tertiary institutions there are students forming themselves into a club to talk about Hong Kong independence. I think there are now people who make use of academic freedom and freedom of speech to advocate Hong Kong independence. If they are just students, nothing will happen. And if there are good teachers leading them along the right way, nothing will happen. But there are some teachers who go the other way. They said that this is academic freedom. We can talk about Hong Kong independence and even try it. Benny Tai is such an example. Benny Tai has done it but did not admit it. He made such remarks in Taiwan. He said that Hong Kong may consider becoming an independent state, and also China can become a confederation. When the CE condemned him, he said that that was not what I meant. That is very unbecoming to a teacher. He is a professor. He kept doing the same thing, advocating the same thing. An intellect has the duty to lead society to improve and to reform. We see teachers who have acted accordingly during the May 4th movement. However, in Hong Kong, we see teachers doing something that is the complete opposite. They want Hong Kong to become a violent society. We don't see them leading society towards the right path. He made use of his capacity as an intellect. The former Chief Executive C.Y. Leung asked a question, a very good one. He asked if the children of the initiators of Occupy movement, have they been sent to prison at all? We now have a teacher, a professor who advocates Hong Kong independence. They try to create a trend. Have they borne the consequences? They still have a job. They still have supporters. But what about members of the public? Are children having seen what teachers, professors have done? They are influenced. They think Hong Kong should be independent. And they don't think that one country, two systems should continue. The opposition said that Mao Zedong did it as well. Mao Zedong bore the consequence. He talked about how a society should be formed. He was forced to go to Jingang Shan. He was forced to do the Long March. But we don't see the same from Benny Tai. Benny Tai is hiding in the academia. We should condemn him. Mr. Tony Tse. Benny Tai not just started the 79-day Occupy Central movement. He has torn apart our economy, has paralyzed our traffic, and he said that we can disobey the law to achieve our means. He said that Hong Kong could consider becoming an independent state. Very often he said that being an independent state is an option. If he did not advocate Hong Kong independence, how come he kept saying that Hong Kong can consider becoming independent? Mr. Tai said that what he said is just based on a premise of a democratic China. He has made similar remarks. In the past, he said that this time people stood up to attack him just to try to create a chilling effect. Last month, when he was interviewed by BBC, he brought up Hong Kong independence again. Is it a case of freedom of speech or actively advocating Hong Kong independence? A lot of people think that if someone makes the same assumption, that means that person believes in what he assumes. Justice Wally Young, in a case of a defendant storming the forecourt of the central government complex, said in his judgment that people who advocates disobeying the law to achieve the means, they refuse to admit that they have broken the law. They even think that it is something that they should be proud of. That is pompous. It has regrettably influenced our youngsters. As a result, in protests and marches, youngsters wantonly destroy or disrupted public order. That is the Vice President's remark of the Court of Appeal. It shows that Mr. Tai has repeatedly mentioned the same idea. That is what he advocates. He is a scholar, and he's an associate professor of Faculty of Law. He influences youngsters. There will be more youngsters who have wrongly believed in Mr. Tai to commit an act that breaks the law.
Mr. Tai will say that, ain't I allowed to say something myself? Well, there should not be any restriction on academic freedom. In Article 19 of the ICCPR, it says that we should respect the rights of reputations of others and for the protection of national security. Now, freedom of expression is restricted. And what we mean by national security, that involves various measures implemented to uphold the national security of a nation. Now, people are using the excuse or reason of freedom of speech as a reason that we can't talk about or advocate Hong Kong independence. Is it just merely a case of freedom of speech on the part of Mr. Tai? Now, Mr. Benny Tai used the freedom of speech as a reason, but in fact is advocating Hong Kong independence. I find that regrettable. Mr. Siu Ka-fai. President, earlier, the Benny Tai, who is an advocate for Occupy Central Movement, a forum in Taiwan, he said that Hong Kong can consider going independent. Let me quote him. He said that we could consider going independent, being part of a federal system or a confederation system similar to that of the European Union. This is self-determination of the nation. The LP thinks that these remarks undermine one country, two systems and are harmful to the national interest. These should be condemned. Now, all along, Hong Kong has been part of the Chinese territories, and Article 1 of the Basic Law says that Hong Kong is an inalienable part of the PRC. And in the preamble of the Basic Law, it also says that according to Article 31 of the Chinese Constitution, the SAR was established, and there should be a one country, two systems to be implemented. But Mr. Benny Tai advocates for Hong Kong independence, and that goes against the constitutional requirement of one country, two systems, and it is in breach of the relevant provisions of the Basic Law, and it undermines the harmony of the country and Hong Kong. But then Benny Tai said that his remarks on Hong Kong independence should be protected by the Constitution, his basic right of freedom of speech. Hong Kong upholds the rule of law. Any person, irrespective of their background, should not be deprived of their rights or freedom of speech. But the principle or the prerequisite that it should be done legally. In fact, the pro-established Hong Kong independence group led by Benny Tai, he's not just fooling the public for the first time. In the Occupy Movement Central, I applied on behalf of my sector to apply for injunction of the court to stop their activities. When the injunction was implemented, these Hong Kong independence advocates and their supporters were staging a peaceful sit-in so that they could seek justice through illegal means. But then that morning, Mr. Frankie Yik saw this group of young people who acted in accordance with the leader's instructions. They sat in that, in the area covered by the injunction. Another group of advocates and leaders, including Benny Tai, the majority of them were sitting outside of the area covered by the injunction so that they would not be committing contempt of court. The legal people knew about the risk, so they tried to stay away from that area, but they didn't advise the young people and supporters to leave that area covered by the injunction. And his motive was clear for everyone to see. And then Benny Tai was using vague wordings. After Occupy Central Movement Benny Tai, and on the 2nd of October 2014, staged a press conference, and he said that he would turn himself in at the police station and shoulder the relevant legal responsibilities, and he would not defend himself, and he would not engage a lawyer. And then he said that he would turn himself in, and that showed that he was willing to take up the legal liability, and he was respecting the law. And on a report published by AM 7:30 on the 18th of September 2017, Benny Tai attended a forum and said that he was taking responsibility, but that doesn't mean that he was admitting that he was wrong legally. I tried to look it up in the dictionary what he meant. Turning himself in was a legal term. It's said in the dictionary. And the culprit, well, before he was arrested or caught, tried to take his initiative to turn himself in, and then was willing to be sanctioned. So, end of quote. In other words, those who were turning themselves in should tell the judicial organizations that about their misbehavior. But then Benny Tai said that he would only report to the police. He would not admit to his responsibility. So he's not practicing what he preaches. So he's misleading our young people. The Liberal Party wants to condemn his remarks. Mr. Raymond Chan. Mr. Xiu Ka-zhong spoke about the remarks made by Mr. Benny Tai in response to our debate today. I must reiterate 2 points. Mr. Benny Tai said that he doesn't support Hong Kong independence. He's just is a person who supports discussion of Hong Kong independence under certain conditions. But some Hong Kong independence advocates would not regard Benny Tai as a person in their group. But the CCP would not like to listen to that. Well, he said that they said that he was a pro-independence person in disguise. And then Benny Tai it was not the first time that Benny Tai was saying something about Hong Kong independence in Taiwan, and his remarks used to be criticized only by the leftist newspapers. But how come that the Hong Kong SAR government and also the Chinese liaison officers joined in to criticize him? Why? Not only because of the remarks he made, but also because it was the person, and he made the remarks in Taiwan, and he did that at a certain time. As what Benny Tai said, if someone would like to find a scapegoat to achieve certain political objectives, and they are doing it, and they were trying to criticize him, like the criticisms made in Cultural Revolution. Well, let's pass a fair comment on Mr. Benny Tai's remarks. Let me quote from two CCP veterans and who said something in the past. Now, if they have made their remarks today, will these be subject to criticisms as well? Well, let's use the yardstick, same set of standards to assess Mr. Benny Tai's remarks in Taiwan. The first paragraph goes like this. We know that there's no hope of making or doing constructions in the nation. Well, if that is the case, let's do more work at the provincial level. Let's have self-determination for 27 districts in the nation. Hunan people can have self-determination, and Hunan people should establish a Hunan Republic in Hunan. Well, that came from Mao Zedong in 1902. I believe that no one will criticize Mao Zedong for advocating independence Hunan, and he should be condemned. And then the other paragraph goes like this. If Guangdong is an independent state, maybe it will develop very quickly, but under the present mechanism, it cannot develop too swiftly. If Guangdong were an independent nation, it would surpass Hong Kong. And that was made by Xi Jinping, the father of Xi Jinping, in 1979 at a working meeting. And the remarks, the comments on then at that time that these are reasonable remarks, and these remarks were supported by cadres in provincials, in provinces and municipalities. Now, if such remarks were made today, now what would be the consequences for the person who made the remarks? So you can see that we are not targeting the content of the remarks. We are targeting the person who has made the remarks, whether this person is your enemy, political enemy, and whether this person should be made the scapegoat. Now, if we want to criticize Professor Benny Tai and criticize independence, remarks on independence, please use the same yardstick to see whether you are actually you want to achieve certain political objectives by doing so. So I so submit. Mrs. Regina Yip. Since late March, when Associate Professor Benny Tai attended a Taipei forum on the Taiwan, organized by the Taiwan Youth Anti-Communist Corps, and he was attending this forum, and he made some concluding remarks. And when he spoke, he said that after following the end of dictatorship, we should consider going independent. And the ICCPR said that people have the right to self-determination, and other places are doing it. For example, Shanghai is doing it as well. And then we can become part of a federal system. We can also consider adopting a confederation system similar to that of the EU. Now, then he goes on to talk about Hong Kong's future if we have national self-determination. Now, after that, those remarks were made. The remarks made sparked a strong reaction. On the 30th March, the SAR government issued a press release condemning such remarks. President, I think these remarks are very dangerous. First, they don't have anything to do with interference of academic freedom, because this is not an academic forum. This is a forum smeared with Taiwan independence sentiment. And also the remarks were founded on wrong basis, and he said that people can have self-determination, different ethnic groups can do the same, Shanghai people can do the same, and Hong Kong can become a federal system or confederation system similar to that of the EU. Well, EU is not in itself a federal system either. These are wrong remarks, and in the international community, very often we don't allow taxation based on self-determination. Buchanan, an international political authority, pointed out that very few constitutions of countries would allow people to have self-determination. And in history, well, such taxation has created disasters. Well, an obvious example is the U.S. The 19th century Civil War stems from the fact that people in the southern part would like to get out of the federation system, and a lot of people were killed in that Civil War. Now, this kind of thinking goes against the Constitution and also the Basic Law. As pointed out by many members, Article 1 of the Basic Law states that Hong Kong is an inalienable part of the country. So that kind of thinking, well, Professor Benny Tai is a university professor, and many people think that that kind of anti-constitutional remarks are no problem. Of course, we don't have any laws to prohibit those kinds of remarks, and I agree that since Hong Kong is a party to the ICCPR, ICSCR, etc. And also Article 39 of the Basic Law stresses that such rights are protected in Hong Kong. So we cannot casually legislate to restrict such freedoms. But then as legislators, we must tell the public clearly that such remarks are very dangerous and can mislead young people and will create a lot of conflicts in the society.
So we should have a debate in this council and criticize such remarks. So I speak. Mr. Chan King, Professor Benny Tai said on the 24th of March this year in attending a Taiwan forum on his thoughts on Hong Kong's independence. He said is what a scholar trying to put in practice what he has researched. And the SAR government issued a statement subsequently that it was shocked by the remarks that Hong Kong could consider becoming an independent state, and the government seriously condemned this. And then there was a joint statement from 6 tertiary institutions, staff associations, saying that the SAR government is a suppression of freedom of speech and academic freedom of scholars. I think we should try to look at the definitions. Article 137 of the Basic Law said that educational institutions may retain their autonomy and enjoy academic freedom. We are talking about the autonomy of these institutions themselves. In answering a question raised here, the SAR government said that the government protect institutional autonomy and academic freedom of the educational institutions. What the academics research into will be determined by the educational institutions. All universities in Hong Kong, whether UGC funded or granted the research funds by the RGC, will have to be reviewed by a research committee. Usually 3 steps are involved. First, the proposal stage. The research proposal will be submitted to the research office of the university, and also the head researcher and the head of the faculty will have to approve certain important research projects, and then the application form will be submitted to the relevant committee for vetting. After vetting, comments will be provided as kind of feedback, and the head researcher would revise the proposal and then resubmit it to the funding approval authority, and also the research committee would have to confirm that the proposal has been duly amended. Otherwise, it's considered an academic wrongdoing. And if the research is a departure from the original proposal, prior approval is required. If the applicant does not do this, does not comply with this, it will be in violation of academic discipline. This is the general practice of universities all around the world. So we would like to know whether the research conducted by Professor Tai has undergone all such procedures, and has Hong Kong U pay for Professor Tai's trip to Taiwan? And in answering an oral question raised by Mr. Junius Ho on the 16th of May, that there was no mention of all these procedures. And also whether Hong Kong University has a complaint against the SAR government's statement in that regard. And also whether have we asked the university and the RGC whether any funding support has been provided to Professor Tai. So I believe the answer is no. So I believe the research carried out by Professor Tai has got nothing to do with Hong Kong University, and therefore the statement has got nothing to do with suppressing his academic freedom. Mr. Ma Fung Kwok. March, Professor Benny Tai attended a forum in Taiwan saying that Hong Kong could consider becoming an independent state, and that's why we have this debate now. I'm shocked by his remarks. Hong Kong is a part of China. There's no room for independence for Hong Kong. Any advocacy of that nature is against the basic law. So his remarks is in total ignorance of the Constitution, and it has also ignored the overall interests of Hong Kong. He has challenged the very foundation of the one country, two system that we have. As an associate professor of law, Professor Tai should show some professionalism as an academic. Article 1 of the Basic Law states very clearly the Hong Kong SAR is an inalienable part of the PRC. But his pro-Hong Kong independence remarks show that his professional understanding of the Basic Law is at variance with people's expectation. What is more serious is that whether in teaching, he will be communicating the bias, legal views, and whether he will be disseminating messages of Hong Kong independence, which is wrong. Professor Tai's remarks subsequently triggered a wide discussion in the community. He tried to explain that he was only talking about various possibilities, and I asked people to respect his academic freedom. The forum was organized by Taiwan Youth Anti-Communist Corps, and that organizations openly going against the status of the ruling party in China. And there are people advocating the independence of Xinjiang and Taiwan in attendance. His defense was totally unconvincing. During the occupation movement, he was one of the initiators and organizers. He advocated seeking justice through breaking the law. And through in the last round of electrical election, he implemented the Thunder Go project to influence the outcome, and also he was going to organize the Project Storm in the coming DC elections. So who would believe that what he did was about academic freedom? On the 1st of April, the colleagues in this council issued a joint statement to condemn him, and he has tried to make use of the loophole in the law to avoid punishment. So this once again illustrates the need for the SAR government to enact law on Article 23. President, this adjournment debate provides an opportunity for us to face up to the problem and the issues squarely. We should ask Professor Tai to stop doing this anymore. And I urge Hong Kong University to pay attention to the behavior of one of his academic staff in spreading message of Hong Kong independence, and stern action should be taken to address the problems. There are people who try to defend to defend Professor Tai. I find this most regrettable. With these remarks, I support the motion. Mr. Wu Chi-wai, the Democratic Party is not in support of Hong Kong independence. We don't think this is there is a future for us in independence. But the pro-establishment members are now taking things out of context and say Professor Tai's remarks are about advocating Hong Kong independence. I think they have an ulterior agenda, ulterior motive, and that is to enact law on Article 23. Professor Tai said he does not support Hong Kong independence, but the SAR government, the Hong Kong Macau office of the State Council pretend not to listen and understand. He says following the end of the dictatorship in China, and then we have a democratic system. So what should Hong Kong do? What should we do? If we cannot try to imagine what happens after something has ended, and we are not allowed to do that. It would go against our core values. Some say that we can make different distinctions of freedom of expression. It can be advocacy, it can be just speech, it can be research. But freedom of speech is just freedom of speech. You don't know whether people are advocating something by saying something, unless there is some act that follows. And under Article 35 of the PRC constitutionals, citizens of the PRC have rights of various kinds, including speech. And it said that the dignity of the person is not violable. No one should libel another citizen. And Article 27 says Hong Kong residents shall have freedoms of speech, of the press and publication, freedom of association, of assembly, of procession and demonstration, the right to form and join trade unions and to strike. These are our freedoms. We may try to understand the thinking behind people's speech. If you take things out of context, the public will think that we are trying to ban certain kinds of speech. It's only natural that we don't always agree with each other. We are in an SAR. When we have a difference of opinion, we can try to convince others. We can have a discussion. We can all try to convince the public to support one's position. But if we say we are afraid of the repercussions of a certain speech, and we say that there are certain prohibited areas, then I would say that we should have a debate first, so that anything that is misunderstood can be clarified. If you try to suppress the freedom, well, you would give a wrong message to young people, because the harder you try to suppress freedom, the more it will be valued by young people. So I cannot agree with this motion in the attempt to suppress freedom. Ms. Claudia Mo, you have 3 minutes. 3 minutes, okay? This is a well-organized exercise to suppress the views of Professor Benny Tai. And it involves the state machinery in a cultural revolution style of exercise. You can see how the pro-establishment camp members have been reading out speeches after speeches. I want to rebuke the mover of the motion, Mr. CHAN Hak-kan. He said Professor Tai is no ordinary person. He was the organizer, one of the organizers of Occupy Central. Well, there was no Occupy Central. It was the umbrella movement. It was initiated by the young people and university students of their own accord. I don't think Professor Tai would like to take the credit himself. And he also talked about the about Thunder Go. It's about trying to cast votes strategically. Who can do a better job on that than the pro-establishment camp? And even for the Project Storm, according to a judge, it's just a recruitment exercise. So what you are doing is just trying to attack an intellectual. There's nothing he can do, and there's nothing you can refuse to do, because it's an order coming from above. It's that it's just a shield. It's just a veil that Professor Tai claims is about academic freedom. Well, he said the same thing 3 years ago in an article published in a newspaper, and you have no problem about that. And then you said that the forum was attended by different elements advocating independence of different areas of China. So you are saying that your speech is okay or not okay depending on who are there. This is cultural revolution styled attack.
Speaking time for members is up. I now call upon the Secretary for Constitution and Mainland Affairs to reply. Secretary. President, I thank Mr. Gary Chan for moving an adjournment motion for debating the remarks made by Mr. Benny Tai in March in Taiwan that Hong Kong can consider becoming an independent state. This will enable us to have a correct understanding of the matter. The SAR government issued a press release on the 30th of March, saying it was shocked by Mr. Tai's remarks and strongly condemned such remarks. The government has always adopted a very clear stance on Hong Kong independence. Any advocacy for Hong Kong independence is not in line with one country, two systems principle, the basic law, and not in the overall long-term interest of Hong Kong. The chief executive said that the SAR government and the Hong Kong society have the duty to defend national security, territorial integrity, and uphold the country's development interest. Any remarks advocating Hong Kong independence, self-determination, saying that Hong Kong can make its own decision to become independent or adopt a federal system are grossly unacceptable. These run counter to the Constitution, the basic law, and will not do any good to Hong Kong maintaining one country, two systems, prosperity, and stability. The Hong Kong SAR was established by the National People's Congress in accordance with Article 31 of the PRC Constitution. The PRC's Hong Kong SAR Basic Law was drawn up by the NPC based on the Constitution. It sets out the systems to be implemented in Hong Kong to uphold the implementation of the country's policies in Hong Kong. Article 1 of the Basic Law says that Hong Kong SAR is an inalienable part of the People's Republic of China. Article 12 stipulates that Hong Kong SAR shall be a local administrative region of the PRC, which shall enjoy a high degree of autonomy and come directly under the CPG. These articles make it clear that the country has sovereignty over Hong Kong and there is no time limit to this. The basic law stimulates that there will be no change for 50 years. This means that the original capitalist system and the way of living in Hong Kong will remain unchanged for 50 years. It doesn't mean that the sovereignty of the country of Hong Kong can change after 50 years. In other words, Hong Kong will remain part of the country after 2047. At the ceremony to celebrate the 20th anniversary of the reunification of Hong Kong with the motherland last year, President Xi Jinping said, "One country is like the roots of a tree. For a tree to grow tall and luxuriant, its roots must run deep and strong. The concept of one country, two systems is advanced, first and foremost to realize and uphold national unity. That is why in the negotiations with the United Kingdom, we made it clear that sovereignty is not for negotiation. Now that Hong Kong has returned to China, it is all the more important for us to firmly uphold China's sovereignty, security, and development interests. In conducting day-to-day affairs, we must be guided by a strong sense of one country, firmly reserve the principle of one country, and thus correctly handle the relationship between the SAR and the central government." Chow Xiaoyang, member of the Law Committee of the 12th MPC, also said clearly in his recent visit to Hong Kong that Hong Kong independence is an issue related to national sentiment and the Constitution. Mr. Chow said that if we understand the struggles of the various ethnic groups in China in recent times, we will understand that Hong Kong independence goes against the common wish of Chinese people and the Constitution and should not be tolerated. Mr. Tai made his Hong Kong independence remarks in a political activity in Taiwan. Let me quote from a response made by Mr. Ma Xiaoguang, spokesperson of the Taiwan Affairs Office of the State Council on 11th of April. Mr. Ma said, "Hong Kong and Taiwan are both part of China. The succession forces of those advocating for Hong Kong independence and Taiwan independence are colluding to openly advocate building an independent state, jeopardizing national sovereignty, territorial integrity, and national interest, and undermining the interest of people in Hong Kong and Taiwan. They do not have the support of the people, are doomed to fail. Advocating for Hong Kong independence is challenging the bottom line of the country's sovereignty and national integrity. There is no room whatsoever for discussing the subject of Hong Kong independence. Hong Kong people enjoy freedom of speech, and the government also cherishes and defends freedom of speech. But we don't want to see people using this as a pretext to call for Hong Kong independence. This cannot be allowed and accepted. Hong Kong upholds the rule of law. Anyone, irrespective of their background, must abide by the law and legally exercise their rights and freedoms. Article 19 of the ICCPR stipulates that everyone shall have the right to freedom of expression, but the exercise of the rights carries with it duties and responsibilities. It may therefore be subject to certain restrictions, but these shall only be such as provided by the law and are necessary. 1. For respect of the rights of reputations of others. 2. For the protection of national security or of public order or of public health or morals. A similar provision is found in Article 16 of the Hong Kong Bill of Rights. The Court of Final Appeal has also stated in its ruling of relevant cases that freedom of expression is not absolute. We condemn Mr. Tai's remarks, but it is totally unrelated to the so-called suppression of freedom of speech. Neither is academic freedom relevant here. If someone disseminates some wrong messages to the society, we must make clarifications, in particular on the advocacy for Hong Kong independence, which will jeopardize national sovereignty, security, and development interests. As part of the Chinese nation, a vast majority of Hong Kong people would disagree with remarks or acts advocating Hong Kong independence. I again thank Mr. Chan for moving the adjournment motion and for members who have spoken to condemn such remarks. Anyone who loves Hong Kong has a duty to ensure that one country, two systems in Hong Kong is implemented in the right direction and to say no to any acts which undermine national sovereignty, security, and development interests. We have the duty to bring up our next generation as citizens with a sense of national identity, a love for Hong Kong, and a commitment to society. We all have the responsibility to uphold the country's sovereignty and territorial integrity. I reiterate that any speeches or advocacy for Hong Kong independence should never be accepted and tolerated. President, I so submit. And now put the question to you that this council do now adjourn. I remind members that in whatever way you vote, the results will be the same. Will those in favor please raise their hands? Mr. Alvin Young claims the division. The division bell will be rung for 5 minutes.
Ms. Claudia Mo, I might have misunderstood you, so I would like to ask, if the total time of debate exceeds 1.5 hours, there is no need to put this to the vote. You're right, but it is not 1.5 hours yet. But there are people who are in the queue. But members are only allowed to speak for up to 75 minutes. The 15 minutes is saved for government officials. If you don't understand, you can look up the rules of procedures. Our understanding is that Mr. Alvin Young has pressed the button. He did not get a chance to speak, and you said that, well, it's less than 1.5 hours. I follow the rules of procedure. If you don't understand, please ask the Secretariat. They will be happy to explain to you.
開始表決。
Voting begins. Please check your votes. If there are no questions, voting closes. Result displayed. Those from FC 24 present, 19 for 4 against. Those from GC 22 present, 13 for 9 against. I think the question is agreed by majority of each of two groups of members. Those returned by FC and those by GC who are present. I declare the motion passed. We will resume on the 30th of May at 11 a.m.